I am fired up to have today's guest on the Virginia Investor Podcast today. This journey is incredible. Mindset is incredible. Leaving W-2 jobs, doing whatever it takes to build your dream home, building a large real estate portfolio, and now managing millions and millions of dollars in a private debt fund for real estate investors to use. The structure is awesome. The deals are awesome. The mindset is awesome. I am so excited to have Jason Seward on the podcast today to share his story. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you very much, man. I'm very excited. Love what you've got here set up and going, and you've been talking about it a while, and I'm glad to be one of your first guests. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fired up to have you on. You have a pretty unique story. Your journey is definitely not the same as many other people, how they just get into it and they just kind of might scale and build a portfolio from there. So I'm excited to see the mindset behind what you built and why you did some of the things you do to get to where you are now, which is pretty impressive. So talk to me a little bit about your childhood growing up, maybe to when you began thinking about real estate. Like, what was your childhood like growing up?
From my perspective, like going all the way back to being like a little kid, I had a relatively good childhood, but that was curated very intentionally by my mother. So my dad, just through some choices he made, he was kind of out of our lives around the time I was about 9 years old. And then from that point to the time he passed away about 5 years ago, he was just kind of in and out, and just, he had gotten into some rough stuff, made some bad choices, and that kind of separated him from us. Him and my mom got divorced, very early on. Well, around the time I was 9. So what I didn't know, like at that time, was the stress that my mother was going through financially, right? So she had this unique ability to make everybody around her and in her bubble feel like everything's perfect, right? And she's always done a great job with that. So when I say from my perspective I had a good childhood, I really did, because she was masking a lot of the struggles that she was going through. Now, reflecting back, or as I got older, I could clearly see that there was a lot of stress, a lot of hardship, and it certainly was. And I won't go into all those details, but it was for me, I learned, like, and this kind of shapes the rest of the story, but I learned at an early age that I want to be a fantastic husband and a fantastic father, because I didn't see that example set for me, right? So kind of oddly, even as I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I was focused on that. Like, I was thinking about my future kids and my future wife and things like that. So that kind of shaped my, I guess I want to say maturity, but I was not the most mature kid either. Right. So I was a knucklehead. I gave my mom a lot of trouble, in those teenage years, but I was centered around that mentality of I was going to do things that my father didn't do, right? And that chip stayed on my shoulder for a while. So,
was your father's parents, is that a generational thing where his grandfather may have been absent or had issues or anything that you
Yes
knew about?
and no. So his father, so my dad was like a fourth generation farmer, right? So, and my last name's Seward, and the area I'm from Surrey County, which is about an hour south of Richmond. And has been generationally a pretty prominent name in the county. So my dad's dad ran the family farm. Mm-hmm. My dad was a very big part of that farm from the time he was like 5 years old. So always, helping around the farm. But his dad was a good father in the sense of he provided, but was always working, right? So the example set for him was work, work, work. And he was a great man, but not very involved, as a father. So my father, was actually early in my life was very involved, right? So from my perspective as a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, I had a superhero dad that drove tractors and, could do everything. But again, it took a turn pretty quickly. So,
what did your mom do for a living?
So my mom, up until the point that my dad was out of our lives, she kind of, it was a mix of staying at home with us. And then there's in Surrey, the Dominion has a nuclear power plant. So she did a lot of temp work there through like seasonal work when they would do maintenance outages and stuff like that. So she spent a lot of years doing that seasonally, right, throughout the year. When my dad, and he ultimately ended up getting arrested and going to jail. So like he was out of the picture. They went through a divorce and it was just her income and it wasn't a lot. So she went to nursing school, put herself through that while still continuing to work and earn income where she could. And then ultimately became a nurse. Or she's retired now, but she was a renal dialysis technician, basically a kidney nurse, and did that basically from the time I was 12 to when she retired. So, yeah.
Was she working like extended hours to cover for the family? So,
Yeah.
like, do you have siblings?
Yeah, I do. I got a sister 2 years younger than me, and a brother that's 6 years younger than me. So it was us and us, you know.
So you were running. I mean, your mother obviously was carrying the weight, but
Yeah.
but when she was gone, was it you looking out for your siblings and things like that? Did
Yeah,
you have that
yeah,
responsibility?
I did, and I took that. I took a lot of pride in that.
Awesome.
Like, you know, at 9 years old, I felt like the man of the house, right? So that was good and bad because fast forward to now, like I'm 43 now, my brother is 37, and we're best friends, but I still like sometimes catch myself talking to him as the 4-year-old
Right.
kid that he was back then. So that's never really left. I just and I say that I made things difficult for my mom as well because like as I got older, I was good outside of the house, but I just had a lot of to be honest, I needed a male influence in the house to keep me in check sometimes. And so I was, for several years, just disrespectful to her and things like that. But I always had this mindset of, I've got to set a good example for my siblings. I've got to help my mom out where I can because she would leave the house before we woke up to go to work, right? And so we were packing our own lunches and doing that kind of stuff. She was always there at our events. We all played sports and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a lot of, I mean, just us three, a lot, you know.
That's
So,
incredible.
yeah.
Do you have, are you close with your mom now?
Very close, extremely close. Yep.
Awesome. That's good to hear. So, yeah, that's a really interesting background. Not something I can relate to at all. I mean, I can relate to being an idiot and being disrespectful to my parents when they tried very hard to raise me and keep me straight. But I think that's probably something most people
Yep.
can relate to. But having to take that sort of responsibility and burden at a young age is interesting. It's likely carries a lot of what made you who you are today. So thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
So now you're in your teenage years. Did you go to college or anything
I
like
did.
that?
I went to Radford University.
Okay, cool.
Well, I'll take that back. I went to Radford, spent 4 years there, got my degree from there, but I bounced around a little bit. Before that, I went to Ferrum College
Okay.
for a semester. Screwed that up, came home, ended up transferring to Christopher Newport, went there a semester, and I'd reached a point where I was just, that it was not going to work out. Like I was missing classes. I
Right.
was, I literally at Christopher Newport was failing all 5 classes. I wasn't showing up to class, nothing,
It's not the lack of intelligence because you wouldn't have been as intelligent as you are now. You don't just like pick that
Right.
up, So it's not lack of intelligence. Was it lack of interest or lack of having a purpose or what do you think it was?
All the above. It was like I had this. I've always had this mindset of I can figure things out on my own, right? So I kind of had this almost rebellion against authority and structure of going to class and learning things that in my mind I would never apply to my real life, right? So I had resistance to that, and for that reason I just kind of gave up on it at that moment. And again, this is my very first year of college, so I went one semester,
Right.
left, went to Christopher Newport, barely went to class. And while I was in that semester, a couple of my buddies from high school were at Radford University,
Okay.
and they were begging me, like, "You get your mess together, come up here with us. We're gonna make it happen." So I finally took the bait, and I had to get very creative to get into Radford because remember I'm failing, right? I have zeros and everything.
Right.
But my grades hadn't come out yet. So I applied to Radford before. The only thing on my transcript when I applied was my grades from Ferrum College, which were like C level, not great. And then my high school transcript, which was also not the greatest.
Right.
So I applied, and I remember the semester, it was about to start in like 2 weeks, and I hadn't heard anything. So I just started hammering the administrative office and trying to get somebody on the phone to give me a decision. And I remember when one of my friends was with me when I was making these phone calls. I got a lady on the phone. She was looking at my transcripts, and she said, "All right, well, can you be here in 2 weeks?" I said, "Yeah." and I mean, this is after begging her,
Right.
and she admitted me. And now I've got to figure out how to pay for it.
That's
so we're
awesome.
working on like grants and all. And my mom didn't have any money
Right.
to help. And long story short, we figured that out. I ended up at Radford and went there for 4 years and graduated. So
That's awesome. So after Radford, what happens?
So I'll take a step back because you asked an earlier question about like my interest in real estate. So that actually started at an early age too. My grandmother was a local real estate agent in our area of the Hampton Roads area, and she kind of bounced around the state, through my childhood. But she kind of made her mark in that area. So, and I was very close to her, so I was with her a lot on showing appointments, and she would have me. If she's getting ready to do an open house, I'd be the one there the day before putting mulch in the flower beds and cleaning the windows and stuff. So I was kind of adjacent to real estate through her, just seeing what it was all about.
Right.
And she would always preach to me. And she owned some real estate herself, some rental houses and a couple commercial properties. But she would always say, no matter what you do, whether it's go and you do a corporate career or whatever, find a way to have your hands in real estate because that's where you're going to build your wealth. So that always stuck with me. I didn't have a vision or know how I was going to do that at that time.
Right.
But as I went through college and then ultimately became an adult, that was always on my mind, and I built it from there.
So and that's awesome to have that sort of influence in your life and someone willing to share that insight, because I would bet that 98% of people don't have that in their life. They're not going to have someone to step up and say, hey, buy real estate, and this is the difference between assets and liabilities, or how you'll get stronger financially. It's just like, hey, do good in school, do good in school, do good in school.
Right.
Did you go corporate straight out of Radford?
Yes. So I graduated Radford in 2004, and came straight back home. Moved right back in with my mom because I had no plan, no job, no nothing. And right at first, I worked for a local restaurant in my town just until while I was applying for jobs. Well, I started doing that. And the owner, he was trying to phase out of that. So he approached me about managing the restaurant, ultimately with a plan for me to buy it. So, again, I'm thinking, okay, this is what I want to do now. And so we start working that. But I realized very quickly the restaurant business, I liked the business. I didn't like the fact that in a small town to make it work, it's not a passive business. I've got to be there from open to close. And I did that for about a year and ended up moving or taking a job with Dominion Power after that. Worked there for about a year and a half, and that was like Dominion Power in my area. You get a job there, you're set for life. You work there 30, 40 years, you retire, great pension, everything. So at that time and that level of maturity, I guess, I thought I'd hit jackpot, right? So I was set. Working there, realized very quickly into that career that it was a true clock in, clock out, made plenty of money, but it was not for me. I'm not a very structured person. So I got approached by the local insurance agent that worked for Farm Bureau Insurance in my county, who I'd known my entire life, about the fact that he was retiring. The company had asked him who would be a good candidate locally that knew everybody. And so he reached out to me. Long story short, I ended up taking that job in 2006, and it was game on from there. And that was a long time corporate career. So.
And what about your wife? When did you meet your wife or get married, start having a family?
Yep. So I met Katie, my wife, shortly after the Farm Bureau.
Okay.
After I took that job, we met in 2007.
Okay.
So we met Hit it off pretty quickly, started dating, and then ended up getting married in 2009. So, and then got 2 kids since then. So
Awesome. And then, so you had this goal, and you had a goal to build your dream home, right? And that's 100%. You were locked in. You were going to do it. And I'm assuming this is during like you're married now. You have your corporate quote unquote job, but you're in insurance. You're selling insurance. And you said, all right, my purpose in life is to build this dream house. Talk to me about that. Why was that your main goal? And then why were you so dead set on that goal?
So it was more so like, I mean, I think it's pretty common to like, as you graduate college, you get a job, you start working, you start earning an income, you start building a family, you buy a house, you upgrade to the next house, that kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So I was okay with that, but I just, from going back to my childhood, I knew that the ultimate happiness for me as an adult, and I could see the vision from being a child, but was to have a wife, have kids, have acreage, no neighbors, and we just run around, do what we want on that land, right? So that was stuck in my head, and I knew like I could have achieved that over a long period of time with the income I was earning at the insurance company, but I wanted to expedite it. So the goal was to this is when I started dabbling in real estate, right? So pretty quickly after I got my job with Farm Bureau, I started thinking about, okay, this income is good, but I can pour gas on it if I start doing some good real estate deals. So again, what inspired the goal was that childhood vision. My wife at the time we were dating, but she was all in on it as well. But I had the way my mind was, we were going to do it through basically live-in fix and flips, right?
Which is wild. Yeah. Absolutely wild.
Yeah.
So at that time when you started investing in real estate, the live-in fix and flips, which we'll jump into, was that a means to an end to get your dream home, or was that creating wealth for you?
I wasn't, and still to this day, I know this is not, there's a little bit of unique in the real estate space. I've very rarely thought about wealth, right? Because it's cliche to say, oh, I don't do it for the money and stuff like that. But I truly, like, it's very rarely crosses my mind. My stuff that I think about is using the wealth, the money as a tool for experiences and lifestyle, right? So that's kind of, I've never wavered from that. So to answer your question, I was not viewing my real estate deals early on as a means of income. It was strictly to keep trading up and rolling equity forward until I can buy that piece of land and build a house. And that, so I had no strategy, I had no end game other than I wanted to get to that point as fast as possible.
Yeah, I love that you just pointed that out about the money versus impact is what I call it. Like whether it's experiences, whether it's, whatever, making a difference or whatever, it's some sort of impact. I've done just a handful of interviews so far for this podcast. Very successful people have been in that seat, yourself included. And every single one of them, upwards of people doing $200+ million of real estate transactions, are saying, it was never really about the money. Like the money came because they were passionate about something else. Like they were passionate about the accomplishment. They were passionate about the impact. They were passionate about making a difference. They were passionate about doing something. And then the money followed. And like as a business owner, I hire people often, and they are a very distinct, people are very distinctly driven by money or driven by accomplishment. And I found that while probably certain professions are very good to be driven by money, I found that I really enjoy being around people who are driven by accomplishment, because that money always follows. And it seems like it's way more money, kind of unintentionally. It's more like the more you can accomplish, the bigger impact you can make, the more value you have.
100% agree. And I, this, even as I was, we'll as we get further into the story, I made some decisions that were anti-money, right? I cut away a lot of money to get to a bigger vision that I had, so we'll get into that in a minute. But back to like when I was working, I was in a sales career, a commission-based career for 17 years, right? Now, ultimately, I ended up into like managerial positions, but it still revolved around sales. Well, most salespeople keep an eye on the money, right? I never, and it was maybe sometimes to a detriment, but as far as motivating others, because
Right.
a lot of people I was leading were motivated by money, but I was, to your point, I was always very clearly focused on a goal that was not related to money. And the money, I never, in my sales career for 17 years, year after year, I never took a step back, right? And that's pretty rare in that industry because if you have a down year, you might make less than you did the year before, right? But I always was able to step up, and I never paid attention to the money until I did my taxes at the end of the year.
Right.
It just, to your point, it just came, and then I used it as a tool to do other things.
Live in flips. To me, horrible idea.
Yeah.
Great. No. Great. I mean, it's fascinating the people that can do that, especially with a wife and kids.
Let me tell the story. So
Yeah, tell us the
I'll
story.
tell you how because it is interesting. So my wife and I, as I mentioned, we met in '07. We got engaged in 2008. When we met, prior to that, I had been living, I had bought a single wide trailer on a very small lot in my area. A real nice lot, but it was an old trailer. I had been renting that trailer. This is before I met my wife. I'd been renting it for $450 a month. My grandmother, who I mentioned earlier, probably after 3 months of being in that trailer, said, "You need to go to the owner and try to buy it. Figure out a way to buy that." And I was like, "I don't know what to do." I have no. Well, it was an old trailer. No bank's gonna make a loan on this thing, but she had some connections through her real estate folks that a local bank, was able to make me a loan. She co-signed on it, and I was able to buy this trailer. The seller carried a little bit of it, so it was kind of a creative deal, creative finance deal.
Yeah.
So, and after all the dust settled, I had a payment of $425 a month, and now I own this crappy trailer.
Nice.
Okay. So after living there, I did that, and I lived there for almost a year. And right around the same time I met my now wife, I decided I was going to build a house on that lot. So I had to yank the trailer out, and I went and rented, while I was building this house, a room from one of my best friends. So I'm renting this room. Folks can't see the size of this room, but it's a tiny bedroom. Had my English bulldog, myself, and now my new girlfriend coming over every now and then. So when she met me, I had just yanked the old trailer out. I'm selling her on this vision of this beautiful house that I'm building, but I'm renting a room from this friend of mine. And I was very frugal at the time. I was also driving a Geo Metro at the time.
The 3-cylinder.
So I was a rock star, and she loved every minute of it, kind of. So we did that. We build the house. And at this point, as soon as we build the house, we move in. And it was, a decent house. It was 1,500 square foot, brand new construction in a nice area, nice lot, nice neighborhood. We get engaged not long after we moved in, and I get a call one day at my office. One of my clients had passed away, and their grandson, who was handling the estate, called me up to handle the insurance affairs. And when he had me on the phone, he said, "Hey, do you know anybody might be interested in her house?" And I said, and already I'm working, like I bought the trailer, was still in mind, like I built this house not planning to stay there. I'm still working towards my dream, right? So immediately, light bulb goes off. I said, "I'll buy the house. What are you trying to sell it for?" And we reached a negotiate, like a verbal over the phone, a price. And I said, "Well, I need to see it first." So I go in this house, terrible. Like she had been in a nursing home before she passed away. Nobody had stepped foot in it. The pantry had canned vegetables with dates on them. Some of them were in the 1970s.
No way.
Yeah, I mean, it was an old farmhouse, a neat piece of land, but needed a lot of work. Basically, uninhabitable. So I reached this verbal agreement with him. Now I've got to go home, and I told him it depends on what my future wife was going to say. But so I go home, and I've got to sell her on the idea of, we're going to sell this house that we just built and get ready to, start our marriage in, to buy a house that doesn't have a kitchen.
Right.
Like literally the kitchen, you couldn't step, like it was to the dirt. But I'm a good salesman, so that that worked out. And very quickly, my neighbor, he actually wanted to buy the house. I didn't have to list it, so we worked out a deal.
Awesome.
Bought this other house, and we move in. And we are sanding floors. We literally didn't have a kitchen, so we had like a little gas, stove that you would tailgate with in our dining room area, a refrigerator plugged in there, and that was it. No kids yet. So we start fixing this up, and all the major stuff I had a contractor doing, but we were doing the sanding the floors, staining them, painting, doing all the cosmetic type stuff. Do that, and long story short, I'll kind of get to the meat of it, but we did that, and then ultimately had our first child in that house, right? But at this point, everything had pretty much been fixed up to where it was a decent house to live in. Then a foreclosure came up, a couple miles down the road. And again, it was a house that needed a lot of work. We're finally, the dust is literally settled on this house. We're married, got a kid, everything's good. And I convinced her that we need to buy this foreclosure house. And the way to do it, she had not bought anything in her name yet. So we could do an FHA loan, 5% down, buy it just in her name. And she bid again. We found a renter for that house, move over to this house, and now we're doing the same stuff again. Got to replace the floors, paint all the walls. And it's funny because we were looking at pictures the other day, or a video of the first time my daughter crawled. And you can see all the painter's tape and stuff like that in the background.
So this foreclosure comes up. So far I'm hearing like, is this something where if you think you would have told your wife, which you probably didn't know this was the plan at this point, or maybe you did, maybe you were like, all right, I'm strategically going to do this until we could build our dream home.
She knew the plan.
She knew. Okay, so she knew in advance you were going to be doing the strategy.
Not live in.
Okay.
She knew that we would be buying property and flipping them and rolling.
You just left out the live in part.
Well, I didn't know that was the plan, right? It just, every deal that popped up, it made the most sense for us to do it that way.
Especially for financing and things like that. I mean, it's way better. That's an interesting point because when I look at it, I'm like, all right, you did 8 or so live-in flips to get to your dream home.
Well, it was not that many live-in flips. It was, so the story could drag on for hours, but like that house, the foreclosure house, we bought that. We were living in it. The renters, we were going to sell the old houses to the renters that were living in it. That got right to closing and fell through. So I decided we didn't want to live in the house we were in. We want to move back to the farmhouse. So we found a renter for that. And then it was a couple more moves in there, but altogether, my wife and I know I moved 8 times in like my first 9 years or so out of college. But my wife and I, as a married couple, moved 6 times in our first 5 years together. So, but a lot of that was going back and forth to different houses.
Right, shuffling around. Yeah. Did you ever question, is it worth it?
No, she probably did because it was chaotic. I mean, I was working a lot in my 9-to-5 job. And then we always had a project going on. Looking back on it, she doesn't regret a thing, and neither do I, because it ultimately got us to where we are now. We never had dicey times in our marriage, but it was stressful because you've got like all of our friends that were our ages, they were buying their big houses that they're still in to this day, and we were sitting here bouncing around, kind of, I guess, putting off, like delaying gratification to what we wanted. And so that was some stressful time through that.
Did you know you were doing that at that time? Like, did you know, because me and my wife certainly, it didn't do anything like that, but like we delayed gratification for quite some time. And we had a plan in place, and we said, hey, look, we could afford more, we could do more, but we're taking a lot of risk over here, and we're making a lot of moves. And so while our good friends are traveling the world and doing all these incredible things, we're just going to hang out in Virginia and we're just going to kind of make it ideally. Like the goal was, if we do the right thing now, and this is because I had several mentors that did something similar. I kind of learned from them where I was like, okay, we could either go live an incredible life now but kind of do that, kind of play this game and work for other people and kind of make a good, but I would say a good income for the next 40 years, 50 years, something like that. Or we could hustle now and not travel the world and really like get after it, try to build all the relationships and income and foundation and all of these principles and assets and everything for the next 10 years. And we're going to miss out on all this stuff. But let's say in 10 years, your kids now understand what's going on. They understand what, what traveling is and you could do that the rest of your life. Did you understand when you were doing this, that it was delayed gratification and you were putting in the work now, or did you just see it as something you had to do?
I like that question because I hadn't really thought of it from that perspective. I think so. My wife and I both, like I mentioned earlier, I grew up. We had no money. I didn't know what travel was. From the time I was a baby till now, my family goes to Outer Banks of North Carolina every year, and that was the extent of my travel. I'd never gone anywhere else than the 2-hour drive down to Outer Banks. So that's all I knew. Wife, very similar. She hadn't done much travel. Her family, they weren't loaded either. And so all both of us really knew were just kind of hanging out, like locally,
Yeah,
right?
that's awesome.
And so we didn't have, it wasn't like a precedent had been set in our lives of all this glamorous travel. So we were able to just settle in. Now, look, I want to caveat that because I got a taste of all that when I was working with Farm Bureau for all those years. It was a sales job and very incentive driven, and the incentives were trips. So Farm Bureau every quarter was flying us somewhere, across the world, and so we got to see a lot of things we otherwise would have missed out on while we were delaying that gratification. We just got to see it on the company's dime, So
I think there's a blessing to not thinking that that's what is you're entitled to in life, because if you grow up traveling the world and seeing all these different things, that's what I think about for my kids all the time. We're like, we're still not traveling the world, but like eventually if we start traveling or whatever, but there is some mentality for people that grow up in that environment of just tons of success and travel that's like what life should be. So they get out of college and that's what they do. And again, like if you're off like traveling the world on a budget and you're just kind of figuring things out, that's different. But I mean, if you're going to like Bali every month and stuff, and when you have the mindset that that's what life is, I feel like that's how you're in that corporate setting for a long time, because that's what like it pays you well enough and it's stable enough to do that. Whereas if you don't know any better, you're just happy where you're at. And then somehow you realize you're building something that you never expected to have. And then you're so grateful for it at the same time. So you did all this, you put in all this work, you, your wife, your family put in all this work, you do your live-in flips, and you build your dream home in 2015. But after all that success, maybe you needed a break. You took a pause from real estate for about 3 years. What was your mindset during that pause?
It was, at that point, it was 2015. My son was born shortly after that, after we moved into the new house. And it was, I had so much success in my career. And I hate to say it was easy, but I was having success without a lot of stress, a lot of, it came natural to me. And especially at that point, I was into management. So it was a demanding job on my time, but I was relatively good at it, right? So I was having success, big income, and I was like, all right, I can do this. And we are frugal. I'll be able to retire off this income early 50s probably, right? So that was my mindset. So it was the real estate thing, and I'd had some bad landlord experiences where I was renting some of these houses, and I just was not a good landlord. And you, as a property manager, I was renting out houses in my hometown where I knew most of the tenants, and I was a pushover.
That's tough,
right? Like every time somebody needed an extra month to pay, that turned into 3 months, 6 months, and I wasn't going to evict them, and they knew that. So I got walked over a lot. So I kind of had a bad experience as being a landlord. Not so much. All the things I did and all the transactions I did led to me owning, a lot of land, or relatively a decent amount. I got 30 acres and a nice house at very low debt, but I didn't want to deal with the headaches anymore. So at that point, we sold off everything we had. I did not own any rentals or anything after probably 2016. And I was okay with that. Like at that point, I was all in, focused on my career. I was going to build it, raise my family, and do the cookie cutter approach,
For sure.
right? And so that's where it was. I had no desire other than in the back of my head. I just always heard my grandmother, like, this is where you create wealth. And the wealth, as I mentioned earlier, wasn't as big of a deal, but I saw the wealth as freedom and a way to, like, possibly leave this career and do things on my own terms. So that was kind of always in the back of my head, but it took about 3 years to get things going again.
So what lit that fire?
Couple things. One very specific thing, and I can tell you, I can't get the exact date right, but it was in April because I was watching, I think, the NCAA tournament. I was sitting on my couch, and it was 2017, maybe 18. Don't remember the exact year. A buddy of mine, who's now my business partner, Bill Phillips, sends out a group text to me and I think it was 3 other buddies, and it was a episode of the Choose FI podcast, which they're based here out of Richmond, but it's like a financial independence podcast. And the podcast episode was on credit card hacking. It had nothing to do with real estate. It was just getting credit cards to get your points for travel. So it caught my interest because we like travel. First time in my life I'd ever listened to a podcast. I knew what podcasts were. I have one now. I'm sitting on one right now, but at that time it was the first one I ever listened to. So I start going down. It opened up this whole new world to me of podcasts, and I started listening to every financial and ultimately the more I listened to them, the more I heard folks. The common denominator was real estate, whether they were just investing in real estate, passively or actively doing it. So that sent me down the bigger pockets road. And then around that same time, the same friend gave me a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that's a pretty common thing you hear, but it just lit the fire again. And then my mindset went from being content with what I had to, if all these people are doing it, I can do it. I'm not the smartest in the world, but I am resourceful enough to build something. So that around 2018 is when I started trying to educate myself on developing a strategy to build something in real estate.
And you decided to partner with your friend Bill.
Yep.
And you guys got into the Burr method. And so you can Google the Burr method for anyone listening who doesn't know what it is. But why Burr and why a partnership?
So it didn't start off as a partnership.
Okay.
So Bill and I, around the same time, independent of each other, but in the same markets, we started doing the Burr strategy, and we were talking every single day.
That's awesome.
And Bill and I, he was my college roommate. We were friends back to high school, or since we were kids. And our wives are best friends, our kids are friends, so there's a lot of connection there. But we were both working demanding corporate jobs, and we were both trying to build a rental portfolio independent of each other. So a lot of times we were looking at the same deals, underwriting them together, and you take this one, I'll take this one kind of thing. So we did that for about a year, and then I'm trying to think. I think it was 2019. We were meeting before work every morning at a Hardee's in our local area, and like at 5 in the morning. Not every morning, but like 3 mornings a week. Comparing notes. He was struggling, like finding deals, negotiating deals, things like that. And I'm good with that stuff. I was struggling with all the organizational type things, keeping up with paying contractors. And I know that sounds terrible, but I'm just not a very organized person. So we're sitting one day going over the notes, and I also had more time than him in my career than he did. He had to be at a location every day. I was free to do what I want. So one day we were like, all right, we have these complementary skill sets, right? If either one of us had both strengths in both areas, we'd be killing it, but we don't.
Right.
So why don't we merge our resources, which our resources just capital, and our strengths, and I'll focus on hunting down deals and talking to wholesalers and stuff like that, and just generating stuff, and then you operate it all. You pay the bills, you get everything lined up, and whatever we're going to do, refinances and stuff. So that's when the gas hit the
Right.
fire, and we just went right to work. I think around 2019 is when we established our LLC, our partnership, and it was game on after that.
Awesome. And you chose the Burr method, I assume, because you could scale that pretty quickly. Like,
Well, the Burr method. So we knew how much capital we had, and it was intuitive to us to take that capital, buy a property, refinance it, and during those years, for anybody that was buying real estate, it was pretty easy to do, right? So you'd cash out after 6 months of holding it. You get all your money back. In a lot of cases, we'd make a little bit of money tax free,
Yep.
and each deal would cash flow a couple $100s a month. So we weren't building much cash flow, but we were building a ton of equity pretty
Right.
quickly. So our balance sheet was going up, 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 and so that's why we leaned into that. And we would flip a few, some higher end houses that maybe the numbers didn't work as a refi. We'd flip them, and so I would say probably we'd buy 4, we'd hold 3, flip 1, kind of deal.
did you have to use other people's money, or were you able to use your own capital because of your jobs?
So we had a good amount of capital ourselves. We realized quickly that was only going to take down 2 or 3 deals at a time, comfortably. So next step was HELOC. We both got a HELOC. We had a good enough financial statements to get an unsecured line of credit, pretty large, both of us. So we were able. That was our next step. And then our final step was we got some private money, and then ultimately started using some hard money. So,
Awesome. Awesome. How did you guys avoid the pitfalls of a partnership that could happen between family and good friends? Like, were there any advice that you would give to someone else who might want to partner with their best friend?
Yep, absolutely. So it's funny because I attended an event in Napa Valley, California, a couple weeks ago, and I had to do a presentation on this topic.
Oh, nice. There
So I got to talk a good bit about it. But to start with, in general, I am not a big fan of partnerships because there's so many variables involved that can go south. In our situation, and I was kind of like advice, we knew that our skill sets complemented each other perfectly. We knew that, and I think this might be the biggest thing that has helped us. We both were kind of raised in that corporate structure of, I could be sitting in a boardroom having to kind of get on somebody about performance or something like that, or having a disagreement about something business-wise. We both were in those environments in our corporate career. And then at 5 o'clock, we check out and we go have a drink with that same person, right? So we both, for years, got a good mentorship, good education, good training around how to balance work and life, right? So Bill and I, and when we structured our partnership, we had extensive conversations around this. Like, we're not going to agree on everything. And so we got to make sure we're always on the same page with how we resolve those situations. We kind of set that in motion, and that has been, I think, our biggest asset as a partnership is our training in our corporate careers. So to answer your question, I've got several friends. I mentioned my brother earlier. I've got my childhood best friend. Neither one, we're all alike. I wouldn't go into business with them. You couldn't pay me to go into business with them, and neither would they with me, because we're too much alike, right? So I think it's finding somebody with the complementary skill sets, finding somebody, and in our case, our families are so close. When we all get together as a family, Bill and I don't talk business. I mean, occasionally we might have to address something, but it's fun, and we have fun, and we separate the two very well. So.
That's interesting. I have a former business partner. We just ended up, I bought him out recently, but it was an incredible relationship. We were friends for 10, 12 years prior to going into business together, knew each other very well. Our families know each other and things like that. But you could tell when we are talking, like, we work out together, there's all kinds of stuff. But when we're working out together and we're talking to each other, we're just joking and laughing, just being boys or whatever, like, there's a different tone. But when we're talking about managing his property, or we're talking about investing in something or business or something like that, there's a different tone that you can hear in that too. And it's literally like, people use the phrase wear different hats or whatever. It's literally like we took off the friendship hat, put on the business hat, and we both, without saying anything, without any switches or anything like that, we both know, hey, look, you're the client, I'm the property manager. This is what's going on with your property. This is what we need to discuss. These are some solutions we have in place. And there's no like, we might still have a joke or something, but it's like what I would do with any other client. Like we're having a client conversation there, or a business partner conversation, or a business conversation. And then we could like walk in the gym after that and just work out and talk about anything under the sun. And it's just completely different people, mindset, mentality. Like we know, hey, we can loosen up. Like this is we're buddies, you know, we're good friends. And so we know how to go back and forth, and none of us need to say it, but it's just very obvious that like, hey, this is business and this is what we need to do to be successful. And then, hey, we're friends. This is how we take care of each other and have a good time.
And Bill, I think an important part of that is, like, for us, we're in the same, and now, you know, we'll talk about our current, our lending business too, because we're partners in that, but we know we both are so aligned with what our it's cliche, but what our whys are, right? And what we have a very clear vision of where we want to go with this thing, and it aligns, right? So I'll give you a really good example of kind of our relationship, and ego is a big part of this, right? We've had to, you know, I don't know if you've read the book by Ryan Holiday, Ego is the Enemy. It's a great book, talks a lot about this, but we've had to suppress our egos because we both have a lot of pride, a lot of opinions, a lot of ego. Well, one of my biggest weaknesses is I want to chase everything, right? Everything seems like a good idea to me, right? So if you start telling me about this asparagus business you want to invest in, immediately I'm thinking, oh, how can I get a piece of this? So I'm very distracted a lot of times. Well, Bill is so focused on the mission that he balances that out for me. But he's so focused that sometimes I'll throw 30 things out. One of them sticks, and it's a golden nugget that we can implement into our business. So talk about like communication. I'll send him a text. Well, I've got a million things on my mind, and I might give him like 5 of them. It's like, here's some things I'm thinking about, blah, blah, blah. And he's going to respond one of 3 ways. He's either, he's going to not respond. He is going to say, all right, well, I like that idea. Let's talk about it next Wednesday or whenever we meet again. Or he's going to give me a middle finger emoji. The middle finger emoji that's his way of saying, move on. Let's keep it moving on the vision. So we bring a lot of that like lighthearted, but to your point, when it's time to talk business, we talk business, and then we put a different hat on. So,
that sounds like a strong partnership. So you guys were hustling, like getting after it during these years, right?
We had 2 full-time jobs.
And so 2 full-time jobs, you grew the portfolio to somewhere around 50 doors, right? And so was there ever a moment during that scaling where you're like, this is all going to fall apart? Or was it pretty like you had it planned out, mapped out, capital was there and things like that?
It's a great question. And I hadn't shared this moment, but Bill and I talk about it a lot. We had reached a point in 2020, early 2022, where we were talking heavily about leaving our jobs, right? We had kind of gotten things to a point where it kind of made sense, but we weren't super confident in it. But I had gotten to a point in my insurance career where I had a path laid out ahead of me where if I had stuck to it, it was going to be a bigger thing for me. I didn't want that, but it was there. Because the real estate had become so demanding on my time, for the first time in my career, I was starting to slip a little bit in my Farm Bureau career. And I got called out on it by one of the executives I appreciate him doing that. And nobody in that company knew what I had going on in real estate. But by calling me out was like, is everything all right? You seem a little off. You know, you don't have the energy you seem to have. And I was like, all right, if somebody else is seeing it, then I got to make a decision. So I go to Bill early 2022. And I'll say, hey, man, if this is where it almost came crumbling down for the real estate. I said, if you want to carry this thing on without me, I can't let this job get away from me, and it's about to. So I need to go over here and focus. And his response was, nope, we were married in this thing, and we're going to figure it out. And so if he could have easily said, all right, I'll buy you out or whatever, and I'm rolling on. But he didn't. And at that point, I knew that it was time, because if I continued on trying to balance the two, I would have probably made some big mistakes in that career, and I had to move on. So,
But there is a power in having a W-2. Like you guys use that to fuel
we were
a
very
lot of your
bankable.
growth, right?
Yeah,
So,
yep.
but a lot of people in investing are like, screw W-2s. W-2s are horrible. Do you think people underestimate the power of having W-2
Yes.
when you're getting started?
Yes. Yep. So the name of my podcast is Burn the Ships. And a lot of people think that my mindset is burn it all down, go start something new and figure it out. It could not be further from the truth. My W-2 for 17 years put me in the position that I am now, right? Without that, I would not have had the liquidity. I wouldn't have had the bankability, the balance sheet, the tax returns and everything to make the moves that I did when I was making those moves. I also got a hell of an education in that career. I learned how to, like, that career served me so good as a leader, especially when I got into management. I learned how to deal, manage people, lead people, deal with different personalities. I mean, you deal with that as a business owner as well. So as we're building our teams now, I know what to do. I know how to hire. I know how to do all the strategic things that involve building and managing teams. So I think when you hear the gurus out there just say burn it to the ground or don't go W-2 route, no, I think, and I get asked that a lot because again, it's the name of my podcast and the logo is on everything we have, a burning ship. All that is just a play on the fact that I ultimately burned the ships on that career.
Right.
But that didn't happen overnight. It took 17 years to build to that. So I encourage, we mentor a few people and I encourage all of them, go to work, go earn your income, cut your teeth, get an education, and then on the side start building something, because in order to burn a ship successfully, you've got to have another ship to step onto.
Right.
Like you can't just burn it and you're going to drown. Right.
Yeah. Having that W-2, I typically will tell, because there's a lot of people I talk to and they're like, should I just get out of my job now? And, I talk to them about, well, what's your financial state? Like, what does that look like?
Right.
What's your plan and everything forward? Because you don't just go buy 50 houses and call it a day, right? And so I typically will advise, like, stay in your W-2 as long as you possibly can because you're bankable. You have steady income coming in, and then as soon as your W-2 is affected by your investing, then make a decision and make sure you have a plan in place. And it sounds like it's similar.
Exactly.
Like you noticed like a kind of a blip or someone was ready and willing to call you out on it, which is a good thing that you have people in your life that do that. You talk about how the W-2 helped you have this capital and be prepared, but you also have mentioned that you lived frugally and that you saved. Like, so when you're doing all these deals and you're starting to make money, how many Ferraris did you buy?
Right. I did not buy a new vehicle. My first new vehicle I ever bought was in 2021.
Wait, hold on. Was that you had a Geo Metro? Were you in the Geo Metro until 2021?
No, but I probably could. I mean, that was a nice car. It was funny. That Metro was a piece. But I had, when I first started my Farm Bureau career, I had these magnets with my name and number, and I put them on the doors. That's awesome. And everybody would give me hell about it. But
that's great.
Yeah, I was very frugal. So was my wife, and we were just kind of raised that way. But that positioned me. I mean, I'm not going to spend a lot of time getting into the numbers, but when I got to the point where I made the decision to leave, and Bill, same, our finances are almost identical, but we both had, with our savings, about a 5-year runway where we could burn the ships, like cut the ties on a pretty big income, not compromise our standard of living, and by living off savings, which, it's not the greatest plan, but it's there. And we earned the right to do that by being frugal for all these years. But I had about 5 years where I could do that, not really compromise much of anything. And if it didn't work out, I had a pretty good resume where I could go out and market myself and go back and get a W-2 job.
Right.
So it was, that was only, I only had that ability by being frugal.
Right.
And by making smart decisions along the way for, again, 17 years. So.
Right. And you see a lot of people make that mistake where they flip 1 or 2 houses and now they're spending a ton of money. And the idea is, like, you can reach financial independence, financial freedom just by not spending a lot of money each month.
Yeah.
Right. You only have to earn a little bit more than that, or enough to have a cushion. Right.
Yep.
And so a lot of people dream of leaving their job for real estate. What do you think keeps people from doing that? Because there are very high earners with high bank accounts and stuff like that. Do you think it's sort of a fear management thing that they just can't take that leap, or
It's a big risk. It's a lot of it, I think. I've said the phrase earlier, standard of living, right? So my wife and I, since the day we got married, before we got married, we kind of had this understanding that we want to build great things and we want to give ourselves and our kids opportunities to do all these great things in life. But if crap hits the fan, we are both comfortable living off 50 grand a year, right? Like we grew up that way. I was, like I mentioned earlier, I was able to buy my land and build my house. I have very little debt on it. So we would never have to give up. I could go work wherever. I mean, I can earn an income and so can she. And if that's the worst case scenario, that's not scary to us, right? And it's not scary to our kids, right? And so with that mindset, we can increase our standard of living, but do so not knowing that we don't have to have that, right? Like we know that that's not the actual standard. The standard is we can just be happy together. So that eliminated a lot of the risk in our minds, like the psychological risk or fear of leaving and leaving behind. I mean, it's, I think to your question, why most people aren't able to do it, it's because when you got that check hitting your bank, that deposit hitting your bank account every month, and it's a good one, and it funds everything. Even if you've got something on the side that you can see that could still fund everything eventually, it's hard to cut ties with that. It's just difficult. And I think we were able to overcome it because the absolute worst case scenario didn't bother us at all. Like still to this day, it doesn't scare me at all. You know,
it's interesting to think of worst case scenario because a lot of times, I need to be careful with this, but it's not that bad.
Right.
Now, the reason I need to be careful is because I don't want to lose everything. I don't want to be sitting here listening to this podcast a year from now and being like, man, I've lost everything, because that's, I feel like that's always possible as a business owner that started something from nothing. You always feel like it can go away, in a snap of a finger. But well, it's not that bad. It's perspective, right? And so there was a guest that I interviewed on this podcast a few episodes earlier that basically he had a few single family houses and then he bought a small commercial property, maybe 4,000 square foot in Petersburg. And then he bought a 111,000 square foot warehouse in Petersburg that was like decrepit, falling apart, like everything. And then he got a $15 million loan to fix it up.
Yeah.
And that was only like phase one, right? And that would have been like 70 units out of like 200 or something. And so I was like, how in the world did you have the confidence to make that jump? And he was like, I just thought about worst case scenario, like the worst case scenario. And previous, he had traveled the world, sort of like I mentioned earlier, he had like sort of in his younger years, no money, traveled the world, and then found out he could live in some country, a pretty good life for like $2 a month, basically. And he was just like, what are we doing? So he said, if everything fell apart and I had to be bankrupt, it's pretty cool living out of a van, and I could do it in this country, and I could do it for $2. It's just like life wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah.
And he was like, so I did it. What's the upside versus the downside? And it was interesting that thought process.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's just not. And the other piece for me is, the one thing I do pride myself on is I'm very resourceful. I mentioned earlier, I'm in no way, shape, or form the smartest person in any room I'm in, right? But I can figure things out. I know how to figure things out. And it's kind of like the theme of my life, and I preach this to my kids, but life is an adventure, and we know how to figure things out, and we're going to have a good attitude and give good effort. Like that is my whole life. And so those few things, if I can just stick to those values and know that, like, I trust that in the worst case scenario, I'll figure it out.
Right.
I have no doubt about that. And that only works, like in our case, if you have a spouse that's on board with that as well.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
so,
exactly what I just wrote down.
okay.
That's the
Right.
note I
Yeah.
just made is like,
Right.
I made two notes. One was kid and one was family. For kids, I was going to point out that like, if you have kids, you need to be very responsible about your decisions. Living in a van, it may not be an option, right? You need to support
Right.
your kids, right? And give them a decent life, right? They come first. So, you know, maybe it's not what worst case scenario is, or maybe your worst case scenario is elevated a bit if you have kids. So maybe not live in a van, but you live in a smaller house that your kids are still happy in, in a good school district and things like that. If that's the barrier that you're willing to reach, then you take risk up to that level. I wrote family because I specifically was thinking about spouses, because I also, there's investors that you talk to that want to make all these moves, or people you talk to want to make all these moves, want to make a difference or make an impact, but their spouse isn't on board with it. And so having that partner is critical and very important. But I think probably the steps into that is trust. Like, you met your wife in a very unique scenario and situation, and then she was ready to ride with you in that status, and then on, and then she saw all the decisions that you make after that, and she saw that you were willing to make it happen. I met my wife in a capacity where I was training to go into special operations in the military, and I always caveat that with, I did not serve, I was not in the military, but I trained and kind of hung out in that world for a while because that was a goal of mine. But that's when I met my wife, and so she met me when I was training for 5 hours a day and working full time, and saying, this is what, very goal oriented, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to make an impact, I'm never going to stop working. And so there's no shock when you get out and you're like, okay, now I'm working 17, 20-hour days, and now I got to accomplish this and do that. And you're not changing who you are in that relationship. And so I think a big advantage, people have a big advantage if they meet their spouse when they are themselves and who they want to be. If you find yourself a little bit later and realize you maybe want to start taking some risks and start having that adventure, that's not how your spouse met you, and they might not always be on board. And I think that is a big challenge that people face. And I don't know that I really have any advice for that. I would just say, like, family comes first, you know, take care of your family, and maybe you can find a way that like is mutually beneficial, or you start really small and gain that trust in your spouse that you can make these decisions and be a little bit more adventurous, and then kind of scaling up from there at your family's risk tolerance, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree. I mean, and Katie knew early on with me, she was getting involved with somebody who's a big risk taker. That's who I am, and I was very transparent with her. It's like, I want to go. Like, this is life. We only got one go around, and I'm gonna go. And now by going, I went pretty hard in my corporate career, and then, you know, we moved a lot and did all those things. But she knew that about me and was okay with it. I would not have left that career without her being 100% on board, right? I'll commit to buying a live-in fix and flip, and, you know, have to sort it out with her. But to make that big of a decision, she had to be 100% on board. And I've told the story before, but about 2 weeks before I put in my resignation letter, I had checked all the boxes. I'd gone through our finances. I had gone over them with her. Everything was good. I knew we were good. I was confident in it. But my wife is such a supporter of me that, like, she has a tendency to kind of hold it in, and, you know, she might have been scared to death and just not told me because she knew I was ready to do this thing. So I didn't want that. Like, I had to pull it out of her if she was feeling that way. So we're sitting in bed one night, and I say, Katie, I need you to level with me. Like, you keep saying the right things. I support you. I trust you, blah, blah, blah. Are you feeling any anxiety about me leaving my job possibly? And I'll say what she said, but she said, me and the kids do not give a shit how much money you make. We just want you here.
Yep.
We just want you here. And because I wasn't there, because physically I was there, but mentally I was
100%.
you know, I had a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9, right? And so that was, and it was sincere. It was green light, and I have not looked back.
Yeah.
So.
That's me and you have had this conversation before, because I remember that, and I feel that like deep in my bones, because I would perform and I would kill myself, work so hard to be successful, and accomplish things. And our family's balance sheet and our net worth and everything was climbing. And I'm spending, I'm working 100-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks, whatever. And I go to my wife every now and then and I'm like, hey, guess what? This is what financial metric we've accomplished, or something like we've made this much money this month, or we've done this. The response is generally like, cool. And she's probably only doing that just to appease me. I'm doing that to impress her.
Yeah.
Because I want her, not to impress her, it's the wrong word,
I get
but
it.
like, I want her to be happy with marrying me.
Yeah.
I want her to be proud of me, and I want her to like feel like we are accomplishing and I'm providing as a father and a husband. And when I bring any financial status to her, update or anything like that, she doesn't care at all.
Same.
She's just like, are you going to be here this weekend to hang out with the kids? Like,
Same.
And so is I think a lot of times we guys like us will get, or husbands or whoever, will get caught up in how much money we can make for our families, when ultimately we just need to be there for our families. Like, yeah, we got to make a living and provide.
Yep.
But I think it's more important that I actually have a question written down for later. We'll get into it later because I don't want to spoil it now, but it's basically what is enough, right? And so we'll cover that later because I have some lead up to that, but I want to get your opinion on when is it enough? When do you stop being away from your family and putting in all the hours? But so to go back to the investing part of it, so you guys are crushing it. You're doing a great job. Obviously there's challenges just like any other business or partnership. But you guys were then saying, all right, let's go do syndications. All right. But then you pivoted from that and went into a debt fund to start a debt fund. What made you pivot from syndications to private lending?
Yep. So we bought our first bigger apartment. It was only 16 units, but I mean, up to that point, it had just been single family homes. We bought that right before mid 22, and then we left our jobs at the end of that year, or towards the end of that year. And the idea was we bought that apartment not knowing what we were doing. We didn't know how to buy an apartment. We didn't know how to analyze it. We analyzed a 16 unit the same way we would a 3-bed, 2-bath single family. We didn't know what, at the time, we didn't really have a good grasp on, what cap rates were, NOI, we were trying to pull comps and didn't know how, like, what this one sold for this, and, it's all income based. We didn't know any of that, but we bought this deal, and it was a crap show. And to this day, we still own it, and it's fantastic now. So it goes, I mean, that's 3 years ago. It goes to show that you just
time heals.
Right, it does. Right. And it is all great now. But the point is, when we bought that, we quickly realized we need an education on this. If this is the route we're going to go and try to buy bigger deals, we need to get an education. So we joined a mastermind group that was specifically focused on multifamily commercial real estate. Joined that group and went to one event, did all their courses and training. We're still in that group this day. It's but we understood the syndication model. Now, what we ultimately left our careers for was to syndicate real estate. That was going to be our full focus. So we had educated ourselves over like a 6-month period. I mean, like when I say educated, it was like going back to college. We were learning everything we could, getting in the right rooms, getting the right mentors. So prior to that, or during that time, we were also lending some of our own capital. We had kind of slowed down on buying single family deals, but we had all this capital that we were lending, making hard money loans. We leave our jobs. We start, prior to that, but we're already underwriting some deals. And around that time, as we got into 23, that's when interest rates started going up. Insurance rates started going up. And a lot of things changed that made the syndication model very tough to pencil out. And we were not going to buy a bad deal. So we just weren't getting a lot of traction there. At the same time, we were lending our own capital. We had rolled, both of us, because of long careers, had very big 401ks. We had rolled that into self-directed accounts, and we started making hard money loans out of that, private money loans, and which is essentially the same thing, just a little less structure with your own money. So we started quickly realizing, man, what are we doing here? This is a lot of profit here. We can build a business around this. We just got to connect some dots because we only had but so much capital. So long story short, we connect with a couple mentors, a couple people that had, well, one person in particular, and I'll shout her out, is Kelly Garrett. She owns a rehab wallet out of Charleston, South Carolina, giant debt fund doing short-term loans. Connected with her. She was very generous with her time and agreed to consult and mentor us in starting up exactly what she had. So
Awesome.
she basically agreed to help build a competitor to what she has, which to this day, I will forever be in debt to her for that. But so we started building the structure out, and it took a few months to kind of, because we had to go through the SEC, we had to work with an SEC attorney, there's a lot of legal things and a lot of cost. But we launched it in July of 23, and the model is pretty simple at a high level where it's a debt investment fund. So investors can invest in it just like they would a mutual fund. It's regulated by the SEC. We pay a return to those investors. They're passive. We pool that capital, and we make short-term real estate loans with that money. And since that day, it has just been game on, scaling it and operating it.
So investors give you their capital. Can that could be cash? It could be out of an IRA. It could be various.
Yeah.
All right. So
yeah, I mean, they can't bring us a bag of cash, but yeah, it can be whatever, however source they want to fund it. So
awesome. And then you for to simplify it, it's in a pool of money, and then you guys determine how to invest that money.
Yeah, it's a unique. So we have parameters we have to stick within the way we've set up our private placement memorandum. So that is our document that we have to adhere to. That is again regulated by the SEC, and that we share. It's kind of like people familiar with buying a stock. You get a prospectus. We have a PPM, a private placement memorandum. So we can't just go invest it in anything we want. It has to be in real estate loans that's secured by the real estate. So we have a lien position. But where we're unique, and Rehab Wallet is the same model, but there's not many funds that operate quite like we do, in the sense that most of your hard money lenders that are using investor capital, so let's say you, Stephen, wanted to park 300 grand with us. I would go then find a deal, 123 Main Street, to make a loan on, somebody flipping that house.
Right.
And if you like the deal, then we would use your money to fund that loan, and then we would make a spread. That's the normal model. We wanted to go a different route because that brings on a lot more risk for that individual investor, because they're tied to that deal. The way we do it is same scenario. You invest 300 grand. Now your money is spread out over 100 loans, right? So if 123 Main Street goes through a foreclosure, you have no idea, and you will not feel it. You're still going to earn your return. So we opted to go that route, and that's how we've operated ever since.
Awesome. How do I track that as an investor? So I give you $300,000, and how do I know what returns I should be getting and where my money's going?
So it's a fixed return in the sense that we have different investor classes. So whatever class you're in, the more money you bring, the more return you get. But let's say like a $300,000 investment is going to earn 9% with us.
Awesome.
So it's a fixed return. You can get a monthly distribution deposited into your account, or you can compound it. The way you track it is we're using a service very similar to what you would use with your bank. You have a login, you can see graphs, you can see your statements every month, your 1099s are housed there, all of that. So
how do you find the deals? How do you find where to place the money?
Yep. So we've got two customers, right? We've got our investors, and let me be clear, I do need to disclose this. We can only take investments from accredited investors. So just look that up if anybody's interested in knowing more about that. So that's one customer base, and that's my primary role in the business is investor relations, raising capital, things like that. Once we have the money, then we have to find borrowers to lend to. And we do that through several strategies we use. Social media is a big one. Networking events. It's with young families, it's hard to attend every event, but we try to keep our face in front of people, sponsor events and stuff like that. And then a lot of it at this point is evolved to a lot of referrals mostly. But to this date, as we've scaled it, the loan demand has pretty much always exceeded the capital we have available, which is a good thing. That's like, if it gets opposite of that, then we're paying investors return on money that's not lent out, and it gets costly to us. So,
Right.
yeah.
So in 2 years, you've scaled to somewhere around $15 million under management and about 3 million loan originations a month. How in the world have you scaled to that size so quickly?
Yeah, so it didn't it if you've heard of folks talk about like hockey stick growth, right?
Right,
So
right.
our first, we're 2 years in.
Okay.
The first year was very slow. I'm having to go out and sell investors on even people involved with real estate aren't familiar with this type of fund structure or this type of model. So I spent a lot of time just selling the model, explaining the risk mitigation strategy we have, and basically asking people to trust us. Just trust us, right? So that was several months of just meeting after meeting, call after call, planting seeds with no harvest, right? So we were fortunate right out of the gate to get some pretty big investments early on. So we hit that like 3 million mark pretty quickly, which gave us enough money to keep to work, realize some little bit of profit, and sharpen our skills and our systems and processes and all that. And then it was, we'd go 3 months without an investment coming in, right? And all our money's out, and we're having to turn away loans, and that was some uncomfortable time.
Yeah.
About, I'd say 15 months to a year and a half in, through a lot of follow-up, a lot of those early seeds we planted just started hitting, because now we can show data. We can show, like, this is what this looks like. I told you this is what it would look like. Now I can prove it. And it just hit. And we went from, really in a 6-month period, went from about 5 million to 15, and we'll be at, we're actually at, we just had a few investments come in the last few weeks. We're probably at 16 and a half now.
Awesome.
We'll probably be at 20 by the end of the year. So it's rolling in now.
I think you and your partner, you've talked openly about the goals that you've set for the year. Do you think that had an impact on how quickly you're growing?
Yes,
Do you think people
100%.
are hearing those goals and saying, hey, let's, lack of better words, like, let's support them?
I think so. Most of our investors to date already knew us or knew of us. A few recent ones have just been referrals from those folks. So that, like, there's 3 important things you got to check off when trying to raise capital. And they got to know you, they got to like you, they got to trust you. So we had a lot of know, like, and trust investors that already had, they just got to understand the model. So that was kind of our first big wave. The most recent wave is through osmosis, these people that know, like, and trust us tell their friends that also have capital. And then they know, like, and trust them. They get to know, like, and trust us, and it starts coming in. I would say it probably the biggest challenge, as I'm thinking through things, again, is getting new folks that don't know us, never heard of us until their friend tells them, getting them to understand exactly what we're doing. Because it seems simple, but there are some complexities, especially around how we mitigate risk. So really breaking that down and giving them real examples. And I mean, we share our finances with anybody interested, right? So they get to see behind the curtain. And I think that over time, just as we continue to prove the model, it builds confidence. And I mean, the people trust us, and they trust our vision. And more than anything else, and I'll talk about vision, Bill and I take a lot of pride in casting that vision, like where we want to see this thing. And when we set those goals, now setting a big goal like that isn't going to make Mr. Smith give us $1 million to help these guys hit their goals. It's very little of that. I think it's more of, I believe in these guys and their ability to go after something, and I think that that's going to protect my money, so I'll throw it in there.
Are these investors able to pull their cash out when they want, or do they have to keep it in a certain amount of time, or what?
So under $1 million, it's a 6-month hold period.
Okay.
After 6 months, it's liquid. So they give us a notice they want to withdraw money. We have up to 90 days to make it liquid. We haven't had anybody liquidate, but if they do, the way our flow of capital is now, we're typically going to be 2 to 3 weeks. Now, If it's a big liquidation, it could take 90 days.
Right.
We got to wait for loans to cycle in or new investors come in. Anything over $1 million, we hold for 1 year, and then it becomes liquid.
Are you still buying real estate?
We are. So we actually closed on a property Thursday.
Awesome.
That is just a wholesale deal. So a nice big house built a few years ago. Somehow it fell in our lap, and we're going to buy it, put it right back on the market. But we have, I think, 2 other flips going on right now, and starting to look at the strategy has changed a little bit because now we have to strategically buy real estate for tax strategy
Right.
now. So
Right.
like buy
To offset income.
right. And so we're now looking to buy more for depreciation or invest in other people's deal for depreciation, more so than, and all the fringe benefits of that is you continue to build your wealth and all
Right,
that.
of course.
So, yeah.
It's one of the good problems to have, but it's definitely a problem
Yeah.
when you have to write the check to the
Right.
IRS.
Right.
Let's shift gears a little
Okay.
bit. So you talk about mindset and unconventional thinking, or at least I think it's unconventional, pretty frequently. And if you're not talking about it, you're demonstrating it. You train jiu-jitsu, you work out every day. I think, if I remember right, you had some wild streak of workouts, right? Like 16 years in a row or something.
Not that long, but yeah.
But yeah. So how do you think staying healthy and challenging yourself plays a role in also being successful professionally?
I could talk for hours on this because it's probably outside of my family. It's more important to me than the business, and there's a lot of reason behind that. It has nothing to do with aesthetics or anything like that. I have this, and it plays in my head constantly, of 80-year-old me, right? And I see a lot of 80-year-olds. I want to be the most capable 80-year-old that my kids can, and my grandkids and great grandkids have ever seen, right? And so that vision plays in my head constantly. I can either be, now granted, things can happen. I can get hit by a bus,
Right.
or and physically disabled or something like that. Aside from all of that, the things that are in my control, I know if I don't focus on it now, it's going to get away from me, and it's going to be a lot harder. So that's the main thing. Is I want, at 70, 80 years old, if my kids want to go to Colorado and on a big hiking trip, okay, let's go. I'll pay for it and we'll go. That's the mindset. So I train now for that. And there's a reason you mentioned jiu-jitsu. I trained jiu-jitsu for several years. And recently, every time I go in, I end up getting injured. So it sets me back on these other physical goals. And
Right.
part of that is ego. I'll get in there and I'm trying to hang with the 25-year-old wrestler, and I get my knee hurt or my hip hurt or elbow or whatever. So I have kind of taken a step back from that. And I may get back into it as I can suppress that ego even more and just go in there for exercise purposes. But I've gotten what I wanted to get out of it. I can
Right.
defend myself for the most part and things like that. But you mentioned the streak. We're about to hit 4 years in a row, my partner and I, Bill, where we've worked out every single day and we hold each other accountable to it. We have another guy that's also involved with our business, Tim Blodgett, that he's in the streak as well. So why that's important is, again, like I mentioned earlier, that's the main reason. I want to be capable when I'm older. But I want to set an example for my kids. Like, Daddy does hard things and he gets up and does it every day. My daughter has her own workout streak. She's 13. I want to say she's 6 months into it. It's the same
awesome.
workout every day as push-ups and burpees and stuff like that. But she's doing it, and my son's a little bit younger. But it's that, and then the other thing, and this gets a little bit deeper with it, but I'm a firm believer in like curating hard things in your life. And if I can control on most days the hardest thing I do, it calibrates my perspective on everything else, right? So like this morning before I came here, I know I got to get a workout in. This is going to be a busy day after this. The kids got some stuff going on this afternoon. I go into the gym and I do a crushing leg workout. It was the hardest thing I've done this week, right? So you could flip this table over and tell me my truck just got stolen out of the parking lot. I know how to deal with hard things, right? So, and because I do them on purpose. So that is a big part of it, is just continuing to do every day something hard that I choose to do, so that the things I don't choose really aren't that big of a deal to me. So
perspective. I mean, and if you haven't dealt with hard things, you're not going to know how to deal with hard things. So like there are so many things that happens as a business owner or a father or whatever, that is brutally challenging.
Yeah.
And if you choose to put yourself in hard positions in the past and have that experience, you're like, well, it wasn't harder than that.
Right.
And like, hey, you know, the 40 miles I ran through the mountains and that one day, like, that was pretty tough. And so, yeah, my leg hurts today, but I'm good to go.
Right.
You know,
I did, we also do these little monthly challenges where we got to do various workouts, and it's competitive. Couple buddies and I do it, but last month we did the Impossible Mile.
Yeah. Have
you heard of it?
Yeah, it's horrible.
Have you done it?
No, I haven't done it. Maybe someday.
Is brutal.
Yeah.
But again, the whole time I was doing it, it was so bad. My wife thought I was going to die. I did it in our front yard.
Nice.
So she sat out there in a chair watching me the whole time, thinking I wasn't going to make it. And my son, he would pop in and out doing it with me, but the whole time I was telling myself, like, this is why I'm doing this, because nothing else is harder than this. Like, you know, just tricking my mind to. But
explain what it is.
So it is a mile. You got to cover a mile, a quarter of a mile of burpees into a broad jump. So you got to go down to a burpee, broad jump ahead.
Forward,
That's the only way you can move forward. So you do that for a quarter of a mile mile of bear crawls, a quarter of a mile of walking lunges, and then a sprint for the finish. Now, I got to the sprint part, and my legs were cramping so bad, like I was straight legging it, running. So it was,
I mean,
it's brutal.
Well, all of that is so leg intense. Like, you're doing broad jumps and like in between the burpees, and then you're doing lunges for a quarter mile, and then even the bear crawl.
The hardest part were the bear crawl.
Brutal.
My triceps were cramping up so bad because you're carrying all that weight on and you can stand up and take a break, but it's time. Like, I'm trying to beat my buddy's time, so it was brutal. And I didn't win. I came in second of the group. So
maybe next time you can do it again.
No, I will never do it again.
But yeah, you do stuff like that. You intentionally put challenges ahead of yourself, and you grow as a person. I mean, there's some saying, I would butcher it. Someone famous and way smarter than me said it, but basically, like, I don't even know why I'm going down this road because I can't remember it. But it's basically like, if you make hard decisions, you have an easy life. Easy decisions, you have a hard life. So you sit on the couch all day, you're going to be unhealthy. You're not going to be successful. It's going to be hard to pay the bills. It's going to be hard to stay alive till a longer age or hang out with your kids. But if you do hard things, you're going to have an easy life, meaning like you're going to be successful. You're going to be able to tackle challenges that come your way. You're going to be healthy, most likely, because you're choosing to do that workout. And so that is certainly one thing that I've learned in my previous life and all this training and stuff like that, is you always have that perspective to rely on, and you learn how much more you can do with your body and your mind than the average person will ever know they're capable of. Yeah. Where we're just average people. We've just, like, something inside of us has either told us we could go further or said, hey, we should try, and we did, and now we learned that we could. Right. But was there anything that, like a book, a person, an experience, or anything that kind of shifted this mindset? Because for me, I was regular Joe, like average guy, made some different decisions, but like physical, and as far as like the challenges and mental and physical challenges, like I wasn't all about it. Like, I was making some decisions. I would like try to stay healthy, whatever, played sports and stuff, but wasn't really into it until some big experience in my life, something happened, changed my entire mindset, and boom, my entire life has been different after that. Was there anything that really like stuck out in your head? Like, maybe you had kids and you're like, I want to be there and live longer. What was it for you?
Yeah, so the kids certainly played a factor. I was never a super athlete, right? I played sports through high school and as a kid, so I'm not like, based off the definition of athleticism, I was not a superstar at any particular sport. So it doesn't go back to like childhood or playing sports. It's more so when I started having kids, I'd always been fairly fit just naturally. And when I say fit, just my metabolism was, I could eat whatever and I
Right.
stayed fairly small. When I had my daughter, that was certainly a big perspective shift of, and at that point I'd been working in my career, sitting at a desk most days, eating what I want, just not really active at all. So that kind of kicked, and that was 2011, kicked a few things in gear, but I was never, still not very serious about
Right.
it. In 2019, again, never horribly out of shape. I had your normal dad bod and just not healthy at all, but I look, put clothes on me, I look
Right,
okay,
right,
right?
right.
So 2019, my wife and I are we're flying to the Bahamas between Christmas and New Year's, right? So it was our first trip together as a couple for that long away from the kids. So we were going to take a few days to go down there. I got the audio book of Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins and listened to that
There you
book
go.
on that trip. And I got goosebumps
Yeah.
right now. It ignited a fire in me because a lot of his childhood stuff, and I won't get into it, but I could relate to a lot of the things he went through as a kid. So then everything else he said behind that about who he is now just got me fired up. And I was like, damn it, I've got to change, right, who I am, because this is going to go downhill if I don't. So I came home from that trip. So beginning of 2020, right before COVID hit, I had this new mindset. Game on. I'm sorry, that was 2018. So it was beginning of 2019 that I really had the new mindset shift. So I kind of programmed my own workout. I had not done this as an adult, right? I'd run a little bit. I'd go hit the gym with
Right.
but I finally started programming something with no knowledge of how to do it. So I beat around, did that, got in decent shape that year. And then when the second thing that happened was COVID hitting, and when everything shut down, I remember talking to my wife. I was like, this could go one of two ways. Like, we're in this house, we're gonna be here every day. When we're here, we're bored. We want to eat all the snacks. We're going to sit around, watch TV, and I'm going to work, and you're going to work, and the kids are here. Or we could realize that that's a trap, and we can get after it.
Get
So
after it.
we started working out. We would wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, go to the room above our garage. She'd do her thing, I'd do my thing, and we started like grinding. And at that point, I really got obsessed. I was doing pretty well in real estate and my career at that time. So I wasn't listening to as much real estate stuff. I got obsessed with health and wellness. And I was listening to Andrew Huberman, Peter
Jocko.
Attia, Jocko, anything I could consume about exercise, nutrition, stuff like that. And ever since then, it has just been one thing after another. I'm always in some kind of workout challenge, and I'm always on some type of mission to eat better, right?
Right.
So that's been it.
I want to ask a question, and I don't know, you don't have to agree with this just to agree. I'm genuinely curious. Before you were, of course, you were maybe like staying in shape, but you weren't really getting after it, right? Like that wasn't your mission. And then you read this book and you started getting after it. You had a mindset shift. David Goggins, I think, helps a lot of people understand that they can make the decision. They're not the victim. They're not, all these, they can just make a decision. And it's very, simple to say, but it's somewhat also easy. And I hesitate to say that because it's easy in the sense that you can do small things to move in that direction. It's not easy just to be David Goggins by any means,
Right.
but like, or to take it to the next level, or to do what you did. That is not easy, but it's almost easy to just start taking small actions. But I think why people don't do it is there's this mentality that, well, the strong way of putting it, and I'm not sure how to articulate this, but it's not like a victim mentality. Like people aren't sitting around saying like, oh, I can't do that. Like they just don't see that the other side of things is possible. But like someone like David Goggins, who's grossly overweight and everyone's making fun of him and bullying him, and he just doesn't have anything going for him in his life. He made a decision.
Yeah.
That was it. And then, after that, he got after it and carried out the decision. For you, when you were like, were you coming up with ways not to be healthier, to avoid it, or to replace it with work? And then you realize like, wait, I can just make a decision and I can have that? Or was it just something that wasn't really on your mind and it put it on your mind that that's important to do?
That's a great question. So I think I haven't thought through it that way, like what mentally triggered it. I know what event triggered it,
Right.
but I think for me, it was more like I had never done any structured as an adult, anything structured for my health, right? So it was more of a like I'm fine. When I go to the doctor, everything's fine. I'm young. I'm fine. I can eat any way I
Right.
want, and I'll get through it. And it was this lack of understanding, probably just kind of intentionally being blind to the fact that you gain 5 pounds a year, and next year you gain five, and
Sneaks
next
up on
year
you.
you gain
Right.
five, and now all of a sudden you've gained 30 pounds, and to walk that horseback is very difficult.
Right.
I just was, it wasn't like I never used the excuse of I don't have time to work out, right? Everybody can make 30 minutes a day or 15 minutes just to do something to get the blood pumping. So I never, ever once used that excuse. It was more so just not, I don't know, man. Like I had all these things in my life that I viewed as hard, which were my jobs and the real estate and eventually and stuff like that. It's like I'm doing enough hard things, right? So why am I going to go do one more hard thing? So it was a little bit of, if I'm being fully transparent, a little bit of laziness, right? And a little bit of this mindset of, a lot of it was, talking about my wife earlier, just thinking, well, she, she's married to me. She's not going anywhere. I don't need to stay healthy for it. And I just wasn't connecting the dots. Like, no, what I'm doing today is impacting that 80-year-old that I talked about earlier. And once I connected those dots and then connected the dots, because when I really had the shift, again, my son was 3, my daughter was 7, made that correlation that I'm setting an example for them and I'm their superhero.
Right.
And if I'm not setting the right example, so it was a culmination of all that, but it was never, I wouldn't say it was, I don't know. I'd have to think through that a little bit more, but
It probably just wasn't top of mind, right? Like you had a lot
Definitely
going
not top of
on, and
mind.
then David Goggins was like, "Hey, you need to do this," and he's a very powerful way
Right.
of showing what happens when you do hard things and what the outcome can be. And you're probably like, "That sounds good."
And
Like
well,
that's
it,
what I
it
want.
does that, and like I knew, now he's extreme, right? He's psychotic with it,
for
right?
sure.
But his messaging was, to your point, is like it just gave me the mindset of just do something, get started and reverse, because it was I really can lean on more specific experiences, like reading that book and stuff, more than I can like overall mindset at the time. But another one around that same time is my wife posted some pictures of us in the Outer Banks, and I know the picture. I still have it as motivation, but I'm sitting there playing cornhole when my little daughter is standing right beside me. She's probably 6 at the time, 5 or 6. I look like in my perspective and what I expected myself, I looked like a cow, right? Had my shirt off, and I was like, what am I doing? That thing in that picture standing beside me is looking at me.
Right.
She's not thinking about it now, but like I need to be better, and stuff like that just got it kicked into gear, and I can't go back now. So,
No, you've set the standard.
right. Yeah, like I've talked about it so much. I've built this reputation, like which is all about design.
Right.
Like I like accountability, so I force it a lot.
That's like Jocko says, he can never eat a donut in public again because like there's paparazzi and everything.
Yeah.
So you have a podcast, Burning the Ships. You interview a lot of successful people on that podcast. Is there one either mindset or trait that you see it as a common thread that makes them successful?
It's a couple. Probably when we're talking about the entrepreneurs, because I interview, athletes and entrepreneurs. And athletes kind of the same way too, but I'd say patience is probably the biggest common denominator. And patience in the sense that, like, they're patient in the outcome, right? But they're very impatient in the activities and getting to the outcome. So that's been something I've seen pretty common. This idea that, like, when I say patience, like that's not, and I got a guest I just had on that I think the episode came out this week, but he talked about patience is not a passive thing, right? You can actively be patient. And so I think that, because I've talked to a lot of CEOs and folks that have started businesses from ground up, and they all shared the same story of how tough and difficult and so much adversity early on, where it would have been easy to throw in the towel and go,
Right.
but they endured through that. So endurance, patience, resourcefulness is a big word that comes up a lot. Like people know how to figure things out, right? Not everybody, but the people I'm talking to just, they have a different, I feel like you're this way. I know I've developed into this, and a lot of people I've talked to, a different relationship with hard things, right? So we talked about curating hard things, but I have this default mode where no matter, let's say, I'm just going to pull an example out of the sky. Let's say an investor calls me today that has 2 million with our company and says, "Hey Jason, I want to pull it out." My default is not, "Oh shit, the world's falling down." It's like, "Okay, let's talk through it. And if that ultimately is what you want to do, let's move on." So I see things, and a lot of my guests that I've talked to view things like adversity as, this is what it is. It sucks. Let's figure out either how to figure it out or move on past it. So they don't spend a lot of time sulking in problems. So I think that's a pretty common one.
That's a good one to point out too. Like we've been very fortunate at Peak with having very low client churn, but we did have a large investor that had told us years prior that his goal is eventually to self-manage. But we just were like hoping that would never happen. And he had 200 units under management at Peak, and so he, they talked to us and say, "Hey, we're gonna self-manage our units now," and that's a lot of revenue. And that's people's jobs and stuff like that. And so the team, everyone's kind of like, "Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? What are we going to do?" And like right after the call, right? And I'm just like, "It's all good, man.
That's
like
it.
We're a grown company. We have great people in the team. We'll go right into the positions. We won't have to let people go. Like there's all kinds of solutions. But you also, so like you can't get low in this. Like you got to think things through, and it's a bummer when stuff like that happens. But you can't get too low as a leader. You also can't get too high.
Right.
So when you have these massive victories and you pick up these big clients or big wins, you're just kind of like, cool.
Yeah.
Because something else bad is going to happen, and you just got to kind of stay level through that.
I agree. And I've heard you talk about this, but some of the best operators, and I say that with quotes because about what I'm getting ready to say behind it is some of the best ones have this ability to what you just talked about, but also this ability and they have this ability to cast a vision throughout their company and create a culture.
Right.
And I mentioned Kelly Garrett earlier. She does what we do, but she's 5-7 years ahead of us, and they've got 150 million under capital. So literally 10x what we are, but started right where we started with nothing. But her messaging is always, now she's got a big team now running all that. She said, "I have 2 jobs, create culture and cast a vision."
Right.
Create culture, cast a vision. I focus on doing that job, and I put people in place to do everything else. Right. I'm not in the weeds with everything. And I think you, from that story you just told and what I've talked to you about it before, you've done a very good job of putting the people in place to do the things, so you're not in the weeds and screwing everything up all the time. Right. You're a leader, and that's not where you need to spend your time. Right.
Yeah, and we're very lucky to have strong teams.
Right.
So you've built a portfolio. You left your corporate job. You started this fund. What is driving you today? The chase, the impact, or the legacy?
A little bit of all three, but it leans heavier now towards impact. When I think of legacy, my mind goes to a couple different places there. When I think of legacy, I don't think of like how people are going to talk. A lot of people think about how they're going to talk about me when I'm gone, right? I think my legacy thought goes more in line with the impact that I leave behind, right? So who did I influence positively, right? What conversations do I have that people walk away from with some kind of spark, and then they take that and do something with it? What I think of what Kelly Garrett did with us. She did not have to do that. She is making all the money in the world, does not need to sit down once a week for a year with guys she barely knows 2 states above her to help us build this thing out. But what did she do there? She stamped another stamp on her legacy. Now I feel the responsibility to, as we continue to grow, to go do that same thing and pass the torch to 4 or 5 people, and then they do it. So I view legacy as kind of the spider web thing where it just compounds, and the things that have been done to help me out, I can pass them along to a few people. They can, so I think of, like, I always have this vision of, if I help you through something and then you take that knowledge and you help a few other people, and then 20 years from now, 1,000 people are helped because of that. That one thing of me helping you, that's legacy. So, but it's impact, right? So I would say of everything you just said, probably impact more than anything else.
So last question before we wrap up. What do you, as being a family man and someone who likes to stay active and work out and be adventurous, what is enough? How do you know you've had enough and it's time to slow down?
That's a good one. I can't say that I have figured that out yet. I know what brings me the most joy. And I also am well aware that that evolves over time. So right now, what brings me the most joy is time with my kids and my wife, right? My kids in 10 years are going to have their own families, right? Mm-hmm. So they're not going to be they'll still bring me joy, but I don't go home to them every day. So then it'll be a new thing, my wife and our adventures and stuff like that. When I think about like what we're doing right now in this business, ultimately you build a business in mind with, at some point, maybe being able to exit that business through a sale or something like that. But at the same time, this is our baby. So we're building it as we're going to have it forever. But we're still in that phase where I have to actively put in work to this business, whether it's raising capital, managing borrowers, whatever it is, to pay the bills, essentially, to fund a lifestyle. I would like, and I envision a point of where, because this energy has to go somewhere. I am super high energy. It's got to go somewhere. But if we can get the businesses set up and the real estate portfolio set up in a way where it's more passive, and then I can redirect that energy into whether it's another business or more philanthropic stuff, right? I want to help. I want to contribute to helping others, shift their mindset into, whether it's working out or starting a business or whatever. So I think ultimately getting to that point where that's true financial freedom to me, where everything's taken care of financially. I've got the people in the right places to run things, and I can focus on things that bring me true happiness, and that is having the impact that you mentioned earlier. So.
Right. That's to me, that's the way to do it, is build it so you can continue to make the impact, but through other people. Yeah. And then it allows them to develop their financial increases and stuff like that, or financial improvement, like status, everything like that. All right. So you have 608B Capital, and you have Burning the Ships podcast. How should people get in touch with you or learn more about what you're doing? What are the best ways to do that?
Okay. Easiest way is social media. I'm Jason Seward on Facebook and Instagram. And each entity, like our podcast and our business, 608B, has its own pages. We have folks that manage that for us. But if you want to reach out to me directly, easiest way is through social media. Shoot me a message. I'm pretty active on there and see it. And I will share this real quick because I get asked it a lot, and I'm sure people are going to be curious what the 608B is. So I mentioned my business partner and I, Bill, went to Radford University together. Our apartment number was 608B Clement Street. So we named the company 608B. So, and then Burning the Ships, the podcast, it's, folks think it's real estate focused. I've got folks from all walks of life on there. I've had several athletes, coaches, stuff like that. So we do cover real estate a good bit on there, but it's all over the place. So, but again, 608B Capital Group on all the social media if you want to check out that. Burning the Ships is on all the social media, and then myself personally. So.
Awesome, man. Yep. Any final thoughts?
I love what you're doing here, man, and I've got to give you your flowers a little bit because you and I talked. I mean, you've been plotting this out and making sure it was right for a long time, right? And this is my first time in the studio and seeing what you have put together. I love it. I'm proud of you for doing it. I mean, down to the name of the podcast, as simple as it is, the Virginia Investor Podcast.
Yeah.
That's great, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very clear. Coming here, how organized you are ahead of it, and it. Like I've got some takeaways of how you're doing
Awesome.
this to take back to mine, and I appreciate it. And you're giving folks a good platform to get some good stuff out here.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And I'll tell you, like, I look up to a lot of people in real estate and investing in the business world, but your mindset and your attitude sticks out to me. Your family values, how you carry yourself, the word that you put out in your podcast is just awesome.
I appreciate it.
So I knew for sure when I was having a podcast, I wanted you on my podcast because I value the way you think and the success that you have and the impact that you're making. And I appreciate you taking time away from all of that to join us today on the Virginia Investor Podcast. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you.